Hello, hello, hello. I affirm. Remember, there's a tape delay. Yeah.
Wait, can we do? Oh, wait.
What should I tell them?
No, Abby's bringing in the chief.
What should I tell them?
Whoa. He's too good for the table.
Yeah, I'll buy the chief.
Josh wants a fry.
Okay. Well, Abby has to sit next to me. Also, you can keep.
I'll move the clock. But I mean, what if you just?
Yeah.
You said no.
Yeah.
I can take it. My decision could be a little bit biased.
The clock was cool though. I never knew you guys gave up clock.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite part of the round.
Okay. I'll just yeah, I'll message them. I'll probably put them on Slack.
No, but did you message them to make
Yeah, I
sure?
was like, test audio, let me know if it's,
Can you hear us?
there's a lag.
I'll do speech off, but I'll do a change.
Just do
Well, you guys.
wait to that.
Oh, wait, tell them to speech off. So stupid.
Well, there's 5 judges.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And Luke.
Hey, wait, did you just
I
realize
wanna
that-
listen to. Yeah. I only heard 3 names. It's the policy part. So I just heard.
Go.
Oh, that was like.
Gonna go.
You're not gonna sit behind me?
I considered it.
Oh, shoot.
I'll text him to you.
Go talk to Chief.
I'm gonna talk to him.
I need help.
I know. I'm trying.
I'll talk to him if you don't.
No, I will talk.
Yeah,
to
yeah.
him, But if I talk to him,
I'll put it on one. Appreciate you, brother. Oh, it's called living.
Oh, fine.
Okay, the speech off.
Let's, yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah, yeah. On your
Don't put any of the policy emails.
Man,
Policy emails on this thing.
well, we do speech off,
These drop,
yeah.
actually against these drop, so if there was.
Well, I was told by judges on the esteemed panel to use. speech off.
26 day.
Who said that?
Who said that? You. Oh.
Wait for all of the judges to get.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was like, I didn't say shit.
Okay.
I don't think you should be.
Yeah.
Judges in the room just seems inefficient.
You're,
Face letting down. Like,
my bad, guys.
there should be speaks in the Scott.
Oh, no, freaking.
Nate,
I mean, we could just vote him down.
I'm Travis.
Okay.
Great to meet you. I'm gonna warn you now. I'm not gonna look at your docs.
No worries.
Neither will
It's starting a trend.
I.
I'm taking credit for it.
Okay, I'm following your lead.
Wait, what?
Your speaks are back up for that active training. For like a 27.
3 chairs. Yeah, I don't know. Why they use the clock as well.
They just always have.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Thanks, man.
I have paid.
I can give you my stand.
You need to close this today. Thank you.
Is Rodrigo your bot? Really good bot.
How much do you pay for that?
Oh, there's another outlet over there. Let me check. Wait, is it, oh, it's one check. Here, wait, put it in the middle, can you put it in the middle?
Oh, you said escorting our debater, our debate.
Cause I need the other two.
You just really. Four?
Well, I got it, man. All right, here, wait, what I can do, just extend it as far as possible, and I can put them in. Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
This your jacket?
No, I don't know what that is.
I'm.
We can move it.
Is that Laura?
Well,
I'm really full. I've had so much caffeine.
It
today
is.
that, like, you're right.
What do you think, you know?
Isn't-
In itself is in the door, and then somebody's like, oh my God, I'm dying. That's crazy.
That'd be
Really
really cool.
consider.
you did your best there.
Right.
Yeah, no one can hold it.
Uh,
against you.
How many? Yeah, yeah. Or all the judges are good.
Yeah, could you give me a second? please?
Yeah, no, obviously.
No, that's on me, I guess.
Well, I told, remind me your name, Nate, this as well, but I'm not gonna read your docs.
That's.
They're following my lead, so.
Sounds good.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'll drop to this.
Yeah, I got it.
You all will not be able to see the decision, so I'll be back in an hour to announce. No, I'll come back to announce, and then you give your decision.
Okay, it doesn't have to be like.
No, it's just, you know,
Little papers.
Well, we-
Like,
there's a little ceremony to this whole thing.
Will we
Oh,
know-
certain
They have clocks as trophies. There's gotta be a ceremony.
There's gotta
Yeah,
be.
sure.
Good luck, everyone.
I like paper clips. Paper? I like paper clips.
I can see it.
There's a couple of debates where I've been like, this is so silly, and eventually you make this around the board here.
Does anyone else need paper? Okay, good.
Thank you.
Is this an indication about the number of off, or?
Oh, I just,
Why is there some legal paper?
oh,
But I'm good.
Oh,
wait, everyone gets the code, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Lowercase g. 86, so 86. Capital P, capital F, lowercase m.
lowercase n or
M.
m. Give it again, that's invalid.
Did you also click N and it was invalidated?
Okay, lowercase g,
Okay, I.
8,
Wait, Liz, could you also let me know the code?
Yeah.
G, wait, G, is like P. Oh, it's capitalized.
Oh.
Okay, I'm
This is
good.
my mobile game.
oh.
The record button. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Scene of economics is rationalized through exploitation of black native life, rewards, and flesh to be extracted from, and disposed to the security accumulation of white sovereign subject, black exposed as an ethical injunction, in the image of a formal entry into the force to blame black, is represented a figural threat to the whiteness which presumes to its own wealth, liberal understanding of the livable wage, presuming interaction about ordering, that codifies the financialized exchange of labor and simultaneous fundamentality of black and necessary conditions of life for vitality. Thus, the paradox of the resolution is the paradox of blackness. What does the living wage mean for those held and reproduced in captivity? Because here the economist is over 22. Black people in captivity, the captive only will ask great wealth, the captive refusing the British wealth must be a crown for the black to be created while white to the wealth of the extraction, brutality, just about erotic reminder. What life belongs to someone else, there is no longer the owner of the state, whether the state claims a life of death of authority of black person, not if not even the right to assure the protection of black lives by the state. What do you have to say about the acquiring property? What is inherited? What does it mean to have the roots and analysis of the ancestor, whatever the lesser? What does she owe to them? Ignoring the prospect of poverty, but the certainty that's running her wealth, including how she had just moved into as possible. Because of the very low labor beaten out of slaves then and there, it's possible to exist without a ward. The double inheritance that take everything will away from me. And everything that would take the double inheritance, not a paradox, is the unpayable debt, slave labor, flesh and blood capital, because labor is transparent, which converts the flesh and blood components of everything possible and actually exists. The black operate as an economic indicator of recall to authority of the state. It should segregate, exclude a lot of separation and incarcerate. Black is economic dispossession, critique the capital, not taking its operation, the black is the account. I find capitalist technology, which was teaches the internet an hour later. This is a paradox of the resolution, which is a paradox of black existence. What does it mean to mature? The way to system that require the continued exploitation and dispossession of black bodies for its own survival. The resolution presupposes an economic order when blackness is perpetually outside of the sphere of economic inclusion, reduced to mere flesh, to be extracted and discarded, fundamentally entangled in liberal frameworks that disregard historical and ongoing exploration of black native world. The concept of a living wage is premised on the black order, and attending the fungibility and disposability of black life as a condition for white vitality. In a nationalized system, a living wage nationalizes violence and dispossession. Necessary to even compare such an economy, workers share the spoils, genocides in Gaza, Sudan, Tigray, Palestine, Copts to require the extraction of black needed flesh for the world to live. We must refuse liberalism, sentences, this is middle managers of racial slavery and conquest, but attempts to promise to share the spoils of racial extraction that promise people or hit jobs of black native people, or worse, being still the logic of white possesses the trained black native people become the overseers and native informants for empire fueling and self-fuel yourself off of your bootstrap narrative. First, you work, you will be alive. The affirmative invites you to embrace black death. It is no longer a question of how we live, but rather how we die in the face of redemption. That's lesson 17. Vigil for labor efforts to get screwed up, person black who joined emerged from the ashes. This very much showed the entire city, from consequently more than women. Politically state in a right here, becomes pointed in. Like off the circle cameras poured into the neighborhoods, like being throughout the darkness, no riots, but church for war, and the speculative power of the state are taking in a white impulse, destroying simulation to return. Towards blackness of these became the building block for a theory of weaponization. How should we live in an age when normally people are not radical, moving against the system, people give the kids are trying to live. Our only hope is to lose hope. We recognize that we cannot win in the world. Begin with we recognize that black sentence is death sentence, and we learn to weaponize it. What does it mean to experience the living that the resolution bounds its call to for the black is appositionality, creates an illogical signifier of what it means to experience life. What is hyper real for the black? That's only the life that is occupied. That's I affirm the indebtedness. The black is the living wage, the nexus in state, of state and capital, fused to the nexus of symbolic to judicial economy for the slave. Living in continual abstraction and ways require the formalization of the work of that blackness. Constantly it disfigures from through racial abstraction what has come to be understood as living wage and nationalization. White possessions from the Tulsa massacre to the Greenhill RD economic accumulation requires the continued production of racial dispossession. Blackness finds itself in these outside of the scene of economic inclusion because the pathology. Blackness criminality is required for the white liberal subject to demarcate where it is what it is and what they own. That's lesson 17. Black life lived in the white house reality and permits death. Black death is simulations and encounter the whiteness in the world. Black is meant to experience death over and over again. And with the fictions, the real black and the nexus of black, the fiction of possibility non-value. Black is trapping and taking because the patterns of black extend the location where the words don't go, diction the syntax don't go. You might not have to grandstand your speaking where it is in how the child gets. And black people only articulate itself in streamers of white and white. Being central black death, basic possibility of structure, possible death and possible security. Black is the embrace of commodity. The truth is cartography of the human corpus. Black body lives in black structure. The world economy of society understood the process of structure. The order of knowledge is human and white symbolism over determines from all itself. And it doesn't anything that challenges strong note and knowing any process of economic inclusion or living wage, the cruel joke as it requires the continued depression and death of black people, the affirmative right to embrace a form of living that is predicated on black death rather than questioning the very condition that makes such death necessary, both as to stay black, die at 720. You gotta do it. What you gotta do is stay black and die for a living to be free, to be black in the world, in the black world, to be a nigger and a nigga. The different it's patterns of movements surrounding the politics perspective really that produce the portrayal functions that turn the conditions like governance alliance desires to around against protection. The right type of black World War II much worried about what's white. We're thinking the fact and niggas are not worried about the white desires, black niggas are concerned. But what with niggas and that's like Asia, risk of being among the black two last years to be a nigga is to resist the call of white. The black human is one is saying as nigga as possible already risking moment. The black space, etc. is to be free in spirit, not in flesh. To live white black, to live while black is what is prepared black. Workers who struggle, the question is how does the nigga use the power of any time and space thus to struggle with the moment of what stay black in the anti-black world. This is for those of us who were never meant to survive instead of succumbing to the wages of whiteness, there is alternative possession and unfolding it the wages of black, which we must fuck up interrelated system of property to protect white life and replace those systems with black native feminist freedom dreams that were already good without you. That's what money is our key. Invaluable, we can never pay for ourselves, nevertheless we are required to pay consistently what we can't be paid. We pay, but not to own our distance. So we have we owe to one another. Fair to signify what we owe, live in is invaluable and put meant to approach and explain that regulates the invaluable. We always speaking us to who he is, the mother one to leave you alone. We pay him at his place time. Well, all he can do whatever he wants to close the question covers most whatever predatory literature circle of food code in this place takes humanity will need to a certain accumulation of man, but box is far in the back of it can be valued as worthless thing out of time. I just want out of here the condition of the undercommon study is today, in the future, plus people only value it can be valued in your service complexity chronic, making living in unpayable debt to without mastery. Thus, gratuitous financialization of whether imprisoned dead black bodies or failed black nations goes on until we cleanse the debt of what goes on, signaling the new black bodies, and two black relations when there is nothing to govern, nothing to secure, and that there is blackness. Didn't read the last.
Good. Asked to disclose, why didn't you tell me what the
told you that was me.
yeah, why didn't you tell me that the app was about anti-blackness?
Wait, what?
Why didn't you just disclose the app, get the advantage area of plain text?
What do you mean?
You were just like, the app's new, why didn't you like disclose beyond that? Why didn't you tell me more about it?
Well, that meets the disclosure. I'm confused.
Is progress possible in your opinion?
In my opinion?
Yeah, like based on what your evidence says,
The evidence would indicate that the state functions through anti-black rhetorics.
is it progress possible?
In what context?
Like, can the state do good things
Like in a
for black
vacuum?
people?
In a vacuum?
Yeah.
No,
Why?
sure. De Silva and the Gillespie and Evans articles do a great job explaining why specifically the state has cracked down upon blackness.
Okay, that's about the past. What claim do you have that all state
Sure.
actions in the future will be bad?
Well, we made an ontological claim in terms of how blackness.
So I'm asking you what the warrants for those ontological claims are.
Sure, the Gillespie evidence indicates that black life is lived in a white hat reality, which permits black death to be the simulation.
What's it? Okay, instead of just telling me buzzwords, let's get started.
I mean, I'm reading you a line from
What
the
is the
evidence.
white
I don't know
hyper
what more
reality?
you want me to do.
What's okay? Well, explain to me in your own words. What's white hyper reality?
Sure, the white hype reality is a system in which black life is constituted within a white fiction that concretes itself as fact. Black life is a life lived in a
Okay,
white existence.
what's white fiction?
Sure, white fiction is the hyperreal or structures that utilize blackness to sort of cohere what it means to
Okay,
be white.
you defend
in
psychoanalysis as the reason the state cannot make action.
What do you mean?
Is
That-
psychoanalysis one of the reasons why the state or why?
I mean,
people
if you
would-
control F psycho and the F, it's not.
Okay, that's fine. Indebtedness of blackness as a living wage.
Sure.
Does the act defend a living wage?
We defend indebtedness to blackness.
Okay, so does like there a
What do
policy
you
that gets like?
No,
a
we don't
wage?
do anything to the United States.
So it's not really a living wage.
Well, what?
Well, you just said you don't do a living wage.
I mean, we don't do a living wage and what you think is a living wage through the United
What do
States
you think a
government.
living wage?
Sure, all of the cards indicate that sort of indebtedness is a heuristic that we should.
Isn't your whole app about how blackness is not able to access life, and now you're
What?
like, let's.
No, the argument is indebtedness towards one another. You can find social life and social death, which is the argument that you like.
That's fine. Can non-black people like understand the black experience?
You're not black, so no. Like, what do you
Okay,
mean
so
black
Can
experience?
I create these like?
What is the wait, Will? What is the black experience?
One sec.
Wait, no. Answer the question. Black
What
experience.
black people experience. Okay, now my question, why is it true that like, why are non-black people able to develop relationalities with black people under
What
your
do you
claim?
mean?
Like, is that possible?
In the context of what? They can embrace death, which would force them to abdicate
I don't
their
know what that
relationships
means.
to humanity.
Okay, any other reason why the state cannot improve
What do you mean?
just in general? Okay, that's fine. Why should you win this debate?
Because I'm
Great, okay. Free case. Violation of the affirmative and the hypothetical implementation of a topic plan, they do not, the negative against a change of violation of the with the defendant resolve requires a legislative instrument, LSA, no 5 legislative instrument for flood policies used to resolve the text of the resolution calls for debate on hypothetical government action. Erickson, 3 topic contains elements of the United States. The agent is the subject should means policy of the action debate is not what something ought to occur. United States means the government, not private entities. Like CUDA, 10 taking order ordinary meaning of the U.S. means our nation through federal government dictionary or consistent with its given our interpretation only the federal government. The term U.S. does not include private entities. Living wage requires money, Cambridge. They living wage enough money to buy things to live. Living wage is a differential rates of minimum wage rates, evaluating in cash payments. Run on 17. Survey on legislation requiring minimum wage identifies 3 different approaches facing minimum wages. Living wage relation to other groups of wages, capacity of industry to pay actual application of living wage within living wage cost of living differs from one locality to another. Same wage implies a different real wage in different localities. Vote negative 1. Procedural fairness. Pay is game and necessity is limits. So one side does not win by default. That encourages fair participation, which is key to accessing the benefits of the app. Good for me is documented. Fairness is first. A game winner loser speech time from 30 minutes produces competitive incentives to guarantee people always breaking the most unexpected part of the lottery fraction of their movement. B outweighs structural fairness. Broken procedures magnify every impact they have and they cannot solve the system altogether. C controls the interval of the clash. D debaters would put under an unfair model, also ending their movement and certainly bad for any of their subject formation solvency. Second, clash limits create predictable stasis points or topic research engagement. Ground materials of vital lid base that generates controversy. Topical debaters switch research burdens every 2 months and will never keep up. Turns case only crash creates nuanced planning for meaningful change. 3, ground they prevent debaters from reading their arguments on the negative or black debaters talking about pessimism because they would always be just agreeing with the app already. Concessionary ground means we'll have to concede solvency that they produce a living wage to get access to our dissets, but conceding solvency means that they would be extra topical, which solves their links. 4, testing T comes before the case. They cannot get access to truth claims that we were unable to contest absent being tied to an advantage area. And let's go with the resolution to always out-prepare us win cases. 105. Switch side debate solves their offense reading it on the negative preserves enough clash to debaters on other things that are wrong since losing to something has the same subject formation impact as winning. TDA, just read the app as a living wage and how that is good for black people. 6, real world taxes, college jobs, every institution can take the same structural problems they say are in debate. Those are inevitable and only policy debates serve as a training ground to enable adequate confrontation of power structure theory. After that, marginalized debaters should isolate because they cannot engage with paternalistic. 7, extra topicality also sucks. Every additional area is unpredictable allows to successfully solve straight turn overcome links. EVA, read the affirmative without the extra topical part. FXT allows them to claim anything infinitely unpredictable results in the topic, and we have 0 offense on the case. 8, debate being bad does not non-unitary impacts. They cannot solve or change any of it. Proven by K teams reading these apps for years and topical apps still being the norm. There is only a risk that any change was a result of switch side debate. 9, T does not minimize the importance of app literature, but disagrees with the deployment. It is not intrinsically exclusionary since this has counterplans case. All disprove the plan and encourage an alternative vision, just like framework. We read T versus Plucky teams every round. 2, 10 competitive incentives. It is proven by the fact that they chose not to disclose the app fully, that they chose not to want 100% engagement, which is proof that they themselves wanted competitive incentives. 11, TVA read without the United States as an actor to implement a living wage because it would solve because their offense is only about the state being bad. Next off, the election sits at the affirmative political fatalism cements GOP control. That is way worse for every of their impacts. Solomon 20, rather than sit out election enable for right to power leftist voters to balance parental power latest polling indicates senators on the next edge of the column. Republican enough progressives won't vote climate, environmental protection, racial justice. So many other matters are on the line. Republicans and more extremist candidates normalize gliding. Right, we're next off. Actually, just go to the case. The role of judges to vote for the better debater. Everything else is inability regressive self-serving. Even if their offense is true, does not justify above the game or just a game board. It just means they have to win. It outweighs our presumption. They do not do anything. 1, police brutality, inequality, discrimination. All of their impacts exist, but cannot be solved by one debate ballot, especially just at a Greenhill tournament. It's not even the TOC. Most people aren't even here watching, and no policymaker or academic pays attention to high school LD. Half the people in the round robin aren't even sitting in this room. 2nd, arguments win not because they are true, but because people are better. Means your movement cannot succeed as soon as it's put up against someone more skilled. Proven by the fact that Justin last week ran a God app and won like every round on, and no chance for subject formation. 1, all causes, friends, family, religion, history class, math teachers, policy-minded tax net in next 80 years of my life. No chance that this round does anything at all. 2nd, empirical people read cap good and the cap pay hedge good, then hedge bad, warming good, the climate advantages. I read pest and then I read this, which means it is definitely no subject formation. Next, individual debates are white noise. You should not vote for the, actually skip this. The theory is wrong. Ontology does not mean anything. A, doesn't matter how many cherry-picked examples they dumped, absent winning a psychic explanation or libidinal economy offense, there's no reason tons of racism is terminally set to mean all racism. But B, empirics prove that libidinal economy is malleable. Johnson, 22, tilts the human nation influence of the rules intensified features of social and conflict and subjects of measuring ego, a couple also raises some psychological plus the game after this susceptibility of the libidinal economy being changed and investigated by social media. C, cruel pessimism is a greater problem than cruel optimism. Cornell and Seeley 16 theories drawn on psychoanalysis to have hopelessness and cruel optimists. There's nothing cruel in to say there's no way out, not because things are going to get better, but they might be, they cannot be proven impossible as participants in struggle weak shape. Struggles is about imagining what things could be, stories materialize political theories and coherent disaster recitation. There's work to be done in decolonization. Pessimism is captive to an apolitical epistemology. A pure world is possible, but everything, including history, can be made better. Terry 23, Warren treats suffering is essential evil, suggests withdrawal advice, even to responsibility for our own suffering. Apolitical epistemology made simply pessimist, capital legend victories of the world, constructive foundations of society, not substitute for this is the standard appear to be on any possible word-looking idea of perfection authorizes everything is perfect. Historical evidence can be changed based on what we decide possibility is. What keeping faith is all about. Sometimes you have to create the like rollbacks only mean that progress is slow, not that it didn't happen. Postchild 17, whether there are grounds for optimism, gap between black people's and white life expectancy decline from 73 years. That is astonishing given the slow pace of respiration disparities declining. Black people are living longer, declining rates of homicides HIV, infertility, cancer, disease, suicide, the law, nothing except the right for life to rise, exonerating individuals through DNA reforming sheets, CTR, enable people to release more extensive testing, lead more exonerations, reduce probability convictions by 70%. These are underestimated research trends, purposes, stunning, pessimism, problematic when you tell supporters that things better and concessions are not for pessimism, take away incentives to mobilize when he answers, reject ontological claims, claims have radical power to reshape the world. Their K essentializes Black scholarship by excluding Africans who are not descendants of slaves that live in the United States. Yancey 13 middle passage lacks objectivity erroneously tethered to has specific narrative and function monolithically and exclude Black bodies that don't narrativize in the same way differential experiences have an impact on how we think about assumptions. Black philosophy links with existential struggle. Ontological structure is not metaphysical enslavement predicated upon sites of power. The power of all that points to the openness of human history can figure the world. Be skeptical of psychoanalytic explanations of racism. Burson 22 first lack of clarity, second tendency to play critical theory and psychoanalysis ask about the nature of the conscious. He lapsed into autobiographical reflection, never defined the unconscious, asserted the unconscious is for everybody conscious or essentialist reflecting on the white mind, never intended to deliver well research presentation decided to simply unleash their anger for white people who normalize feelings of hatred. That could sound more like political theory than scholarly analysis. Cut at analysis. Debates about economic inequality foster empathy. Hansen 22 growing inequality causing young people to lack empathy for those outside their socioeconomic groups. Society organized into flocks, neighborhoods, and schools. Interactions become segregated by socioeconomic status, particularly little social experiences of their own. If we teach inequality, we can develop empathy to change lives of people in crisis. Liberalism is not a monolith. So actually, skip that card. Switch side role-playing debate covering inequality is valuable. Teaches cognitive flexibility. High 22 talks to inequality closely relevant to students' daily lives. Motivates students to consider cultural backgrounds. Role-play debate forms. Innovative activity encourage clear arguments. Promote cognitive flexibility and comprehensively opportunities for making skills and reasoned arguments. Economic inequality debate. It teaches. I skip that part. Living wage is good because it is awesome for disabled people. Sinato 23 to pay disabilities little $3 an hour. Comments as smart to protests the tax cards allow employers to pay significantly less. Want to be paid for wages. Want to be however our people with disabilities or people should not be paid for an employer less than the minimum wage. Only are evidence it is a radical. The living wage is a radical assault on capitalist dispossession. Breed 20. Living wage would reduce Black poverty rates, enhance military cumulative wealth, reduce the price how poor. Working class home owners living wage most effective means discriminatory administration, not in case of universal initiatives.
You're good. Yes. Okay. You read Affirmative before, don't be Black and deny it. Do you think it's true?
I think that some of the arguments it makes is true, but it's like solution is probably.
Wait, like which ones?
It is certainly true that gratuitous violence exists for Black people.
Okay.
It is also certainly true that Black people are subject to a lot of structural violence within society.
Well, a lot of, is it, you seem to concede it like gratuitous violence.
I also think
So does
that,
that mean that it's sort of like?
well, I'm not saying that Black people are the only people that experience gratuity
Wait,
in the
so,
world,
like,
but
yes or
they
no?
certainly experience gratuitous violence.
Well, so yes or no?
I also think that, like, in terms of like its solution, I do not think that it
Well,
is.
yeah,
I don't know about ending the world, but I think that
I mean,
the
where
idea
does
that
it
people
opt-
should
where does
think
it
about
opt in the
society
world?
as a whole.
Yeah, where
is
does it
something
opt
that
in the
is
world? It seems like you agree that it's like good as a heuristic frame, but we shouldn't arrive at the end conclusion of writing down the
I'm
world.
just, I'm saying, like, you reading this on the affirmative, like, does not allow me to engage. It's not
Wait,
connected
no,
to the
answer my
topic.
question, answer deflecting,
That is-
like, yes or no? Do you think that Afro-pessimism as a heuristic is good? You seem to have like agreed with some of its core tenets, now answer the question.
Yeah, but I don't think the way
Yes,
you presented it is a way in which I can engage.
Okay, sure, that's fine. All right, I guess case, why specifically is debates about economic inequality foster empathy? The app has sort of critiqued economic inequality, why this is not possible.
Well, the argument is that a lot of times now people are spoiled children and they.
The app, are we spoiled children?
Wait, one sec, we are very privileged here at the Greenhill round robin, but one second. It's that
Okay,
in the
man.
status quo, different classes kind of exist, which means that people don't really look outside of their economic situation.
Wait, yeah, the app has
That-
analyzed
what the
systems of
affirmative-
anti-blackness and economic, like.
Debating about the living wage would mean that like rich people could, like us, who are like privileged and able to come to these tournaments.
Wait,
or
it's
just
just
think
a
about
lot of
how-
like,
Would you just let me finish for once?
I feel like your question is like dodging my original one.
It's not, you asked what the card was about. I explained
Yeah,
that
I'm
it allows us
asking
to
in the
develop
context
empathy
of the
with people that are
affirmative.
not in our socioeconomic statuses. That
Wait,
is-
so just talking about like poor people is good? Like, is that your argument?
Well, to understand that and to create policy proposals that can help them and to understand those things, those are all valuable impacts, yes.
Okay. I guess specifically the Burston card, it talks about sort of lack of clarity in terms of the Kilani article. Why?
Where is this?
Be skeptical of psychoanalytic explanations. Yeah, it says that the cost of talking to white people is at the cost of your own life. They suck you dry. There are no good apples. They seem to conclude that white people are sort of parasitic upon project blackness. The cost of talking to white people at all, the cost of your own life, as they suck you dry. There are no good apples.
Yeah, so this is what's happening is Dr. Fulani is the person that like this author is responding to. So
Sure.
they are first quoting their argument and then later on they're saying that that argument is wrong.
Wait, the article then concedes right after that white people were like oil money.
That responds to that.
Uh,
talking.
Oh, 5 seconds. Any within the reason to drop the team outside of framework? Great. I have 2:30. Case.
Top down.
Start with like an overview.
Like. There will be. Actually,
You're just gonna drop your things with them.
obviously not. But it'll be answered on framework.
Case frame.
Can we get an info on that overview thing or?
There'll be an explanation of the app. There'll be-
I was like, I voted dodge the question.
I was like- And also for. clarity
Kids these
reasons.
days went line by line, they just like look for like 2 minutes, like kind of gesture at
Oh.
things.
Yeah, I guess like, for clarity reasons, overview, explanation, case, the dis add proper. Because I think framework, dis add on framework.
You're great, you're great.
Please slow down.
All right, man. Yeah. has interment TX case charge 100. It demonstrates William has an indented. The Vikings said he must demonstrate in good faith by giving us a valid personality. Here and now, you should ask yourself, what does it mean to live in a world where the only condition you are able to experience is death? The answer should leave you puzzled, what's your critique? The notion of living and providing the answer, rising or believing in its future is product. We're fighting another day is wrong, we must first accept death as a preach condition, but affirmative to embrace black terrorism here and now, and ethical will break the white house reality of the black as it maintains its growing here. One of the now, one of the four, no, we are not truly pessimistic about saying that source like the sun. Remember, it's source of death now, they say one of the five, no. Conceded argument of power in terms of the king and still guard say that it's rather the critique of the resolution and economic formulation of how they're fundamental bottom black. That is not a responsibility. Hostile here first is a hostile and negative decline in life expectancy during COVID cruise and never again or wiped out due to destruction of the virus during 2023. A new study reveals tracking disparity 1.63 million access deaths in black population, which will have probably in 2020 coincided with COVID, comparing against typical laws of community that overturned inequality despite the progress in 2000 forcing indicate the efforts to eliminate the series which has been minimally effective. Now, what is 8 no? We should not reject our political plans because they are good in terms of understanding our heuristic gain about the absolute concentration of why the app is particularly bad. That means you get an app. The app 100% double T, 1 T, 9 would be typical. It's not going to explanation. Did not rely on analysis for a theory of why reality how that quote that has formulated and titrated this up. The information that we consume today was really by intelligence. 1 T 10 was we're going to debate about economic inequality. Though this is not responsive, our argument is that we should be able to debate about economic inequality, but we should be able to debate about economic inequality, or rather, it should be through the lens of analyzing anti-blackness here and now, which means the hard question. Now they say that this was not responsive. Rather, was not responsive. Our argument is that not disabled people should obviously be valued for their work, but not in the scope of the app. Now the like transatlantic K here, first no link, I have not characterized the middle passage is a singular limit in time centered on European slave trade, but as consumer horizon that in argument, small that relies on the anti-blackness additionally we cannot read off pessimism, which means the argument starts at none of this. Conceded out of the what I see, conceded out of the what I see TX, the app is not beyond anything, which means that it's not talking about the app being good additions about is good. It's a black sociality here and now. You cannot solve for impact out there, which means that the impact calculus should be rejected on faith, but means that you should have heard about activities here and now, which means there's no link to the dissent. Counter-theorization debate is not just a game of study performance for previous rounds, make up flowing system of memories that continually take the command of humanity for a whole red. The evolution of thought, K to K after activity, disconnect, not disconnect from each of us, but informed of our subjective relations which are the way which community has evolved. So not a norm, not a rule. That second competing interpretations are bad. And to realize that utopian model of white nostalgia, no deterrence against taking rumor, when stop the explosion of chaos. Now, legal universality, just have your strong interpretation as the letter of the law, it disqualifies legal personality to the petty sense. The universal definition with advanced civilizing mission will track it out, with experience that select each job. The impact is the local splitting, where Black David forces to view the affective relations. The resolution as those resolutions are adjusted to our framework. Now the individuation to have the model forces us to start the presumption of violence out there at the level of institutions with systems from violence in here. The liberation of racial violence and interpersonal violence out the restoration of sociality through cultural reclamation here and now. We're not having the energy to do it. Fairness first. No impact fairness only comes. It only becomes the impact when they have justified violence. Violent game is uniquely good and sentiment arbitrary. Also being great new and actually strict core of the topic on unequal funding coaching. Infinite policy asking me that there are vague plain text policy disclosure means accessing a threshold for fairness is arbitrary. The paradox, no link. We don't think fairness as a value statement is bad for the maximization of it over other things in every instance. It is now the TBA which side right here. Even if this is true, even if the TBA is able to solve the app, which is not considered the app to me, but it's not able to the app and the United States funded the United States. This debate is not about what we have done, but rather the imposition of T in the trial was violent between the TBA. It's not solve all any of our lawsuits now. Subjectivity shift here. Yes, subjectivity shift. It's formed by the ability of people who not. It's formed by the sheer amount of time that we spend researching debate. Truth testing. But first, this is racist for doing things how like suffering aren't true because it's unpredictable. The community which impact turned by K slash now. So through content the question of what we slash over the class maximize education. But good debaters instead of good people, such as that we can't solve our good case. Class over plan focus legalized can never still upgrade black sociality here and now.
I want you read the read.
Oh yeah.
Going to take my 5 minutes of preparation.
Okay, the order is, framework. The case.
Sorry, what was it?
Framework the case. For the, framework debate, I'm gonna be bringing some of those top level, the case arguments at the top of the one and see about like subject information stuff. Or would you rather me do that on the case? I would just sign.
I'm probably gonna sit it down.
Straight down.
I'll see.
Okay. Sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Debate is a game, they have dropped that. It can also be a site for discussion, activism, movement building, but it descriptively resembles a game. They've dropped that. Speech time starts paying winners, losers, rules, volunteer participation, all prove that it is a game. Drop competitive incentives. This ends the debate. Debaters are inherently influenced by what they need to do to win, which means an unlimited interpretation with no predictable stasis point, no definition whatsoever guarantees that debaters would just do whatever it takes to run the most unpredictable parts of the literature-based event, truisms like racism, battle, read a college policy act, because even if they theoretically have a limited interpretation that says site of performance, that does not mean that is actually what their interpretation is, because that interpretation is not grounded in the resolution. Nobody would expect that to be the interpretation when they enter the debate space, which means Harker might just come and read a college policy act because that would theoretically be something that is a performance or something they can make up as a part of the interpretation. Now, all of these are allowed under their interpretation and certainly fracture their movement. It is impossible to engage in understanding relationality or doing any of the affect things they have said because nobody will unconditionally commit to those debates like they envision because nobody is able to predict them. That means that even if policy assessments are not 100% perfect, there is only risk that our model is net better for either preserving fairness or preserving a space that can even allow deliberation in the first place. At the top, counter prediction. It obviously does not solve any of our offense. It is not grounded in predictable definitions. It links super hard to the limits it's at because they're key to because it has no predictable stasis points for reparation. Nobody can prep out the entire library, so having a set area of clash is key to these discussions. The ballot should center engagement over avoidance because it controls the interlinks to every one of their impacts because it builds portable advocacy skills that are key to movement building and organizing tactics. At the top, one, it requires subject formation for to create relations with each other. You've dropped every warrant on case for why subject formation does not occur. That in the debate space it is impossible, which means I'm not even sure why you can win on this argument or why any of your interpretations built up other than good for me, which is obviously not a contestable argument, obviously not fit for a debate space that is not meant for that. Second is completely unlimiting. That was all above. It means that there's no way you could solve any of your offense because teams would just read apps that are completely unpredictable. Third, personal debates are violent. We are impact turning this. We're saying that personal identities, life stories, they should be discussed, but they should not be debated. It is violent to reject someone's identity over another because if I read an affirmative, you would have to say that my version of my personal experience is obviously bad or my affect in that experience is not good, which is their argument about why it should be a site of performance for our relations with each other. If that performance is something about my personal identity, that should be obviously wrong for a model that incentivizes engaging analysis over other things. Now, the argument about whiteness, you should group all of these argument about lived experience, giving up affect relations, bad for personal. They cannot solve any of these impacts. There's no way that their interpretation is grounded in anything connected to a living wage or the resolution, etc. And that is obviously fine. Most importantly, they have dropped switch side debate. This literally ends the debate. And our argument is that you could just read this on the negative, and that would allow us to create personal relationships with each other in at least half of those debates, which means there's no reason you would need this both on the affirmative and the negative. That is just something you've made up. Secondly, they've dropped the TVA that you should do a living wage without the USFG. Notice how every single one of their case arguments is about why the USFG is something that is bad, that it is anti-black, that it cannot make progress. All of that is not about a living wage. That is not saying that we should just, that giving money is bad, only that the fact that the state doing it is bad, which means it would solve all of their offense and it would be fine. And we are just saying that you should defend something that is somewhat connected to the resolution, which we are able to defend. They've also just dropped all of the real world stuff. When you go into the real world, you will have to face policy proposals, you will have to face taxes, institutions, etc. And disengaging from all of those things is something that is bad, which means there is some benefit to policy discussion. The next argument about fairness, conceding violent competition, not even sure what this means, but you have certainly dropped the argument that if debate is not a fair activity, if the affirmative wins 100% of the time, then obviously debaters would quit, which is also bad for your argument about why we create relations with each other, because how would you create relations with someone that is quitting the debate space? They say vague plan text, not even sure what these next arguments mean. They obviously do not make debate unfair. We are saying that fairness is important because it is key to functional debates. Absent both sides having equal objective chances of winning, debaters would quit. They would disinvest from the activity that was everything above because abiding by speech time, showing up to debates on time, not interrupting speeches, all of them work to preserve fairness, not sticking to the resolution tips the scale unequally, which is obviously bad. The other page, they say I've dropped the thesis of the app. You've dropped that I was unable to test the app in the first place, which means you do not get access to it. Obviously, you've read a new affirmative review. You were competitively incentivized to break something new against me, which means there was no possible way I would have known this as well as you, which means it's obviously unfair, which means top categories prior questions, whether or not you're going to evaluate case impacts. The next arguments about how subjectivity shifts gears, all of this relies on subject information that will be answered on case. Truth testing is racist, not which is sure what this even means. I am just saying there is a better model to engage your arguments, not that they are false. I'm not presuming you are racist, simply saying that I was unable to delve into the nuances of your argument absent winning a top quality argument case. They have dropped every reason for why presumption is false first. Nobody looks at this round. Even if some people are watching, certainly not everyone is watching, which means it does not certainly spill up, even if it is true that the debaters have been reading these arguments for years. That obviously does not change the way people think about it. They've also dropped all causes. The next 80 years of my life, history class, Harvard, Westlake, teaching me things. All of those are reasons why it is impossible that this round specifically will allow me to think about anything differently, which is why affective relations are impossible to spill up. It's also empirically true because KF's teams have been reading this for years. That was explained above. If the 2AR ends up going for their content being undefendable, one, it is defending their content is obviously not bad. All of that was explained above for why policy discussions are somewhat good in some offense, or else you should vote on the fairness argument because otherwise functional debates would collapse the space, or at least you should have clash over something is better than nothing because it's obviously, unless they're going for destroying the debate space good, that obviously would link into all of their offense because they cannot create affective relationalities with seconds. Second, going for something does not make you believe in everything it says. Debaters switch sides for advocacy results, not subject formation. Three, defending bad content is good because problematic things produce losses that are unlearning experiences. It also crowdsources and teaches others to read good stuff versus a problematic thing. Four, stealing negative ground forces us to read other bad things on both sides because I could not read your critique on the negative. Five, only clash determines the problematic nature of arguments. You should hold the line. If they cannot prove the resolution is overwhelmingly problematic or racist at first glance, then iterative engagement and testing over its potential problematic implications are preferable over instantaneous assertions of why its content is bad.
Where do you start?
I'm good.
This debate is only a question of Williams' indebtedness to the affirmative in terms of how they relate to blackness, which must mean that you must vote affirmative in terms of the giving of the ballot for sociality talk. So you know that the only thing that your ballot can actually do is give me the ballot in terms of black, in terms of creating black sociality here and now. If you drop the option, you know it's true. What does it mean to live in a world? The only condition that we are able to experience death would mean that experiencing death is the precondition to what the affirmative humanistic description is also impact terms of utilization of framing is necessary for legal and whether or not the definition that they have a right are uniquely good and uniquely good presumption is not trying to excuse the opposite that you know it's whether or not built up or rather the imposition of what you can do in this round and whether or not that's a good thing for the project of blackness policy discussion are relevant factor the utilization of the collective in definition which we'll do now. Anyway. Extend the universality. This is the first question you need to ask yourself is whether or not the model of debate that William has asked you to determine is impossible. You conclude no. Then you ask whether the ballot can enact the vision of debate that they call for. You will conclude no. Can the ballot kill Ashley, Lydia, Easton, Zion, Chester, critical debate? You will conclude no. The final question is William asked himself is how actual definition, the definition, or not what community is the community has concluded universally true for some reason, which I'm predictability informed by local history, not consuming the critical basis for the table demanding definition of a relative solution rather than how it establishes whiteness, the correct black definition taken as teacher and state or benefit, the contrary, the rendering of the affirmative as not factual enough to warrant by reproduce such a here and now, which is the argument that which is black boundary to forfeit the subjective political details to satisfy the universal conception of the verdict of rejoinder or whatever the act calls about, whatever the act implies. Now the framing issue that they situations are bad and model can produce all other human are irrelevant. It does not matter whether or not what you're about to do out there, but rather the question the legalizing utilization of procedural debate here now university has intended the word impact terms of in here it says that the utilization of these sort of terms or that the legal definitions are the basis for what happens in terms of black sociality, which means it's across the only response to that it's legitimizing that we shouldn't negate people's lived experiences under our argument, rather the imposition of legal definitions here and now is irrelevant. Legal definitions here and now is unable to create affective mode of sociality, which means that the affirmative would definitely outweigh additionally drop this act is not legal solutions, or rather it's about saying it will universally derive predictability from legalism, and legalism is bad, which means that there's no impact on that they can go for. We'll do the society debate here, even if it's true, this is not the debate about what we could have done out there. The position of TV in this round was violent, which means the TV and suicide debate does not solve any of our effective offense doubt subjectivity. It's irrelevant. We're only going for offense in this round, but we'll answer the subpoints anyway. All causes does not dispute the fact that the debate still has at least some impact on our liberal debate with Kansas, even some people struggle, etc. It's relevant occurring over a context model, which again does not matter now. True testing drop the offense. You cannot obviously it's obviously racist in order to say that it's how I should be prioritized and into the procedural fairness, which is obviously relevant. Additionally, conceded no impact on fairness seems cut arbitrarily, which means that the imposition of team is racist in this round and rejected no impact in the question of case should be a tiebreaker to the argument.
I'll be done in a second.
Oh, no worries.
Sorry, 1 second.
Almost?
Yeah, submitting it now. Oh, yeah, let me submit it.
I'm sorry, we weren't gaming crap in the hallway for visually refreshing you.
Yeah. No, you're.
Oh, no, we.
That's lawyer speak, allegedly. Period. You think I'm saying.
Covered in here who needs to be. Cool. Congratulations to both debaters making it to finals of the Greenhill round robin. The decision is a 3-2 for the negative from Harvard Westlake.
I can go first. Firstly, I found this debate to be very back and forth because I do think that there were some things that were sufficiently answered on both the affirmative and negative. I'll just kind of read my RFP and kind of go with it. Firstly, I vote aye on this case page in the discussion of sociality. This contextualization of the limits this ad with the claims of affect and movement building is very undercovered coming out of the 2AR. And this probably served to be the biggest kind of like worrying question of the debate. I think the 2AR makes a big push on affect and how rendering the aff in the subject of violence and how legalizing Black sociality is the only response for forms of like liberation of the Black body. But to be honest, there's little explanation on how the aff offense in alignment indebtedness actually operates. However, there's claims on how the aff doesn't need spillover claims, which I think to be functionally true, but it also becomes a question on in-round procedural sociality, which isn't sufficiently explained by the 2AR. As with a bunch of other things. However, I do believe the 2AR functionally conceded the explanation of the counter-interp in relation to sociality and how the no impacts the fairness arguments and how that warrants out why I should be giving aff some leeway of offense, which I do believe the 2AR to be kind of undercovering a bit of this. Thus, I view this round through a line of questioning. First, I look at the implications of universalized the decide basically, my bad. Universalizability decide, thank you. In the context of the grammar of suffering arguments and the definition index, I think this argument about the imposition of legal definitions and affect modes of sociality is good. I think the 2NR's responses are mostly in the context of slight spillover warrants in disads, i.e. a lot of the arguments against this are in this idea that like the affirmative needs some sort of offense that spills over or creates like out of bound change. And I think that the Nate sufficiently answers this in the coming out of the 1A and 2A. I also think there is an impact regarding how unfairness could collapse the space, but I do think this is answered later in the RFP. I believe that this formation of ideals is fundamentally a violent one, as explained in the counter interp and the warranting of the T page. Thus, I believe the neg needs to do more work on the implications and how that kind of fits into my ballot. I think that the offense assumes that debate is quote unquote a game, which is kind of taken out by the counter interp's explanation and the warranting in the 2NR. And I think that there just needs to be more explanation on how I view debate as a game, especially if the counter interpreter is saying that we should view debate as subject formations and like things that are outside of a game. But again, none of this is really answered by the 2AR. It's just kind of assumed that debate is a game when we come here for like subject formations. And there's this generic stasis point, but the stasis point is rooted in like anti-Black ideologies, which is kind of explained by the sociality claims later on in the 2I. And I do buy some leeway there. Cool. I think that the offense assumes the debate is a game, but it's not warranted out against my argument to the 1A about like bias and racial bias within institutions and how it's essentially arbitrary, which is another conceded thing in the counter insert. Finally, I'm looking at case. Does the app solve in the context of the ontological claims and indebtedness of the space? What offense is warranted in the 2R that grants of this? I think that this argument with the limits this at gave me like the hardest decision of my life, because I don't think that there was a lot of warranting on why the 2AR grants gets a lot of offense. And I think that the limits this side does provide some defense against it. However, I think that the arguments about Black sociality in the ballot were not the best, et cetera, but I think the explanation of the counter interp in regards to Black sociality and subject formation is okay. And I think that Nate makes arguments on both of these claims in regards to the case page in the 2AR, albeit they're kind of blippy ones, but there are at least some explanations on how you grant some offense from there. Thus, I kind of end up leaning affirmative. But I do see how this is a negative ballot because I really was typing my ballot to focus on the limits this side and voting on the limits this side initially. I just ended up voting on the affirmative because I do think there's some explanation in the 2AR that grants the miss. However, I think the explanation in the 2AR needs to be a lot better for me to like solidly believe in my decision, because ultimately, like, as you heard from the RFP, there's a lot of instances where I'm leading neg on the limits this side and a bunch of other things that are undercovered.
So I also said, I'm just gonna leave that lingering for like 2 seconds. Anyways, and so I actually first a comment about like the debate itself. It was so weird and uncomfortable to be around. I don't know if it's like a personal perception or if they'll hate each other or if something happened before the round, but there were like so many moments in like cross-egg / little like things before the speeches started where I was just like, oh man, can we like get the debate started, or are we gonna like roll it out so that you can create like a mud pit or something? Like it was really weird. And so I don't know. I think that part of it more than just like a thing to like be awkward to be around, but there's so many pieces that like y'all have talked about like in cross-eggs in those different moments that aren't used throughout the debate, which I actually think are like not necessarily important, but I thought it was like cool cross-ex moments where if it did become something, I'd be like, oh, okay, awesome. For example, like the 1NC cross-ex about like William having read pessimism before, the things that are like agreed upon and whether or not like that does anything about subject formation, what it like looks like, what it means for the affirmative, what it means for like different parts of the T debate, etc. But then also for the 1AC, what like some of the reasonings are for why the affirmative is true, like different lines of evidence being pulled out, etc. And so I think that all of those cross-ex moments, more than just like a, ha, I got you, like, basically, no, I don't want to say that, because, anyways. So I think that those moments should have been used to make this debate a lot simpler. Like, I think both of you give, like, 1ERs and kind of the 1NR, because, like, a piece of it being rebuttal on case, are like the normative answers to give, but not like what this debate is. And I think that's ultimately like why I ended up voting affirmative. Because while the 2AR is not as specific as I would like it to be, I think that there is a level of specificity about what this debate means for the here and now, especially given that the warrant that I get for the concession of like the counter interest and bad stuff is about like all of this being a process of like refining like the system of whiteness, blackness, etc. which means that like, even if you're right about how to create the perfect debate/debate space, that is all in alignment with whiteness, and so like, it might be super cool, I guess, in some like way, shape, or form where people can like have a living wage without the USFG, but it also means that like all this stuff on case where you're just like debating policy is good, debating over something is better than nothing, defending bad content is good, which is random. I was like, sure. And then like testing on things like racism good, like all of that stuff just feels like it is in fact a refinement of those processes that are bad. And then in terms of like unique offense, I guess to like look at for 2AR versus the 2NR, I agree with Joshua about like the universality dispatch stuff. And I also wrote this down, but part of like the decision was if I like thought about the pieces of offense between the 2AR and the 2NR, and just like in a post round, somebody was like, what about all of these like 2NR arguments that are kind of just like this TBA thing, this suicide debate, whatever, would it make me change my decision? And the answer was no. So I voted no.
I'll go first. The first question, I voted negative. The first question I asked myself at the end of this debate is what can the ballot solve? And the answer I come to is very little on both sides. I think the 2AR correctly identifies there's very little my ballot can do to materially change anything in terms of spilling up to create anything, like models of debate, sociality, etc. I think the 2NR is conversely ahead, that my ballot cannot effectively spill up the shape subjectivities like materially, and I should not render decisions based on affective relationality, which my computer. Of active relationality, which I think is part of the 2NR case push that is like not persuasive, but I think the 2AR drops pieces of it, and I think that sort of acts as defense to the push to the question of relationality. I think this puts ballot solvency in a really weird spot where I sort of think my ballot is useless, ballot is useless to materially solve A point, any forms of relationality, but B point, models. So I end up sitting here because no one does judge instruction, and I think that's my big piece as to why this is a 3-2. And I could have voted either way much quicker if anyone explained to me what to do with arguments, but there were a lot of arguments floating in different places that were not applied or not explained, like weighing, I don't know, like there were just a lot of things that I had to intervene on. And so I just don't know materially what my ballot does. I think the 2AR correctly identifies what the ballot doesn't do. And I think it's worse at giving a proactive understanding of what my ballot can do to create space and what it means. I also think the explanation of the app, materially, I think you're using framework to generate uniqueness for the app, and like that's how you generate solvency. I think that needs to be flagged more explicitly. And I think when thinking through app solvency, what does using framework as sort of the uniqueness frame for that debate look like? The framework page, I start with the TBA, surprisingly, which is do the app but not using the USFG. I think it's dropped by the 2AR and it soaks up a large the 2NR, or dropped by the 2AR, and so it soaks up a large swath of the 2AR on legalism bad, because it proves that there are ways to engage in engage to solve neg offense while also not being attached to legalism. I think this is a very bad argument because I don't think this is not a topical version of the affirmative because it does not meet your interpretation. But you never say that. And so it's just like, me making that argument for you is intervening. And I think if you had been like, this isn't topical, which proves like, I think I would have, like that defensive piece wouldn't exist. I think because that defensive piece exists, it means the legalism good push and engaging in like legal debates is solved because their model somehow allows for non-legal debates and strategies, which is weird, but I think that has a net benefit of the iterative testing piece, that there's value over the process of debating from a predictable stasis point. And I think the negative is one, offensive turns to the sort of sociality offense that 2NR goes for via the limits explosion makes Harper do a bunch of really bad things that I'm scared of, and that the process of iterative debates causes better conclusions to be reached. And even if your model of debate is steeped in whiteness, the process of debating can still come to valuable ends, and the process of like reading the critique on the negative is still valuable. I also think the 2NR is winning enough defense on the question of individual sociality. The stuff I talked about above a bit, that's like debate should not be rendered on individual subject positions. And I think the 2AR needed to sit here if it wanted to my ballot to be like the ballot can only resolve like affective and like interpersonal relationality. Because I think the negative is ahead on sort of turn as to why me rendering decisions all of that is bad.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, with the caveat that like I think why I ultimately voted neg was just, there was this end part of the 2NR where it was just like, in order to justify a version of debate with no limits and no predictability, and that the app can just read whatever they want from their subject position without any like hook to the topic, that you have to win that the resolution is so overwhelmingly bad that it justifies a limitless form of debate. And that was like the closest thing I got to impact calculus in either of the last two rebuttals. And so I ultimately, like, that last 30 seconds of the NR really carried a lot of juice for me, because I was thinking about it as like, you know, on the one hand, I do think that you win that the USFG is irredeemably bad, but it's less clear to me like what that means for what the app is supposed to do in debate. And I think one other piece of defense, like I agree with what my colleague right here just said in terms of a lot of the other defense that the neg won. But I also think the other thing that was a little bit weird is I thought throughout CX, the NC and the NR, you kind of let the neg get away with a lot in terms of this, like, you didn't disclose, you follow speech times, like there's kind of this like implied concession of like, oh, you're also out to do things for a competitive advantage. And like, well, normally those arguments make me feel a little goofy because I'm like, I don't know what you disclosed or what you didn't disclose or what you said, but I think in this context, you kind of just dropped it the whole debate, and then like, it makes your model of debate seem less yeah, and also just like a little bit like as if it's like you're willing to concede so much in terms of the structure of the debate, then why wouldn't that prove his argument that like you can defend some, or you can like read a position without endorsing it, or that reading your aff on the neg half the time would solve some of your offense. And so I ultimately just think that there are certain like a combination of like framing the limits disad and a lot more impact defense that makes that I think the neg wins that their interpretation is superior.
My decision's framed by like a similar line from the 2NR that's just like you need to prove that the resolution is like uncompletely like tenable and like racist to defend, which I think shaped by the topical version of the app. I'm like inclined to like lean negative on here. I have a line from the 2NR on the TVA, which is like it does not solve like our affective offense, which I do not understand what that means. And it's a common theme with the 2NR where there are like several arguments that I'm like really not sure either what it means or like what to do with it. Which means I think it's possible to defend the app like topically, which would answer a lot of like the legal definition stuff because it's possible to like be textual enough under the affirmative. I also think switch side debate means that it's possible to have these debates on the negative, and you can also either defend this app topically or just have other debates where you defend things that you don't believe in, which the 2NR seems to indicate is a good thing because you can learn more about like the world, other issues, etc. And it seems like the 2NR model of debate where they understand what the app is, you have that sort of conversation and can discuss things like relationality is better than a world in which the app always wins. We will never have any kind of debates. There is no more like investment into the activity, and then we can no longer like have those sort of discussions, which means I think that is like a more tenable world for debate, and I would vote nay. That's the law of our piece, though. Do you all have any questions?
Yeah, I guess like a few. First, in terms of like the, I guess, the model or like the model K at the top of the 2AR, which is like models debate is relevant and competing interrupts are bad, render a large part of the 2NR unresponsive no explicit defensive in Q&R, with no Q&R answers, in context, in tandem with like the sort of definitions to that, I guess, how would these arguments make sense by the 2AR? So it seems that there'd be like a lot of confusion in terms of like what the 2AR is like going for in terms of critiquing models or competing interpretations, and then going for like in-round ballot proximity. How do you think the 2AR should phrase it and characterize it, or to sort of like make more sense?
Can I just say, I think there's like a like a foundational question that isn't answered by the 2AR of just like, what is the neg supposed to do? Like,
That's the whole point, like,
I have a difference.
okay,
My answer is I think there's defense to the ballot proximity argument, or like there's defense to, basically, I don't think my ballot does anything, which is like the.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is just like, you have said the ballot is not about models, you have said that ballots cannot shape affective relationality. Which means there's no actual interpretation of what the ballot proactively does.
yeah,
And so it sort of makes the models K and 2AR non-responsive.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Like, it
So, like-
doesn't get you much money.
yeah, so like, I guess we would need to win sort of some risk of subjectivity, which then is a prior question to like the internal link to this ad, which means that we need to have defense right there in order to get it, okay. So, yeah, I get that. So I guess the question, do you have any questions?
Oh, yeah. I just have like a few quick questions. So my first question is, I understand the answer to this question about subjectivity. Another 2AR vision that we have is like going for the models case, saying that the ballot doesn't need to change people's minds, just needs to vote down like behavior that you will win on these races. Do you think that 2AR, like this ad paired with like your ballot cannot instantiate a model of debate that is like topical, but it can sort of like remedy anti-blackness here now? Is that persuasive, or do you think there's a version of that that is persuasive?
oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. No, I would agree, but
Yeah.
so,
Wait,
yeah, sorry. Cause, and this is actually something that like I had a really big conversation about earlier, but there's a lot of judges that their activity who like think that their ballot means more than it does. But it's just like, if I don't vote for Tricks in this debate, then suddenly Tricks is gonna seem like the worst, like everyone knows that. It's just like, yeah, for some people, that's like an intuitive thing, but largely like, even if it can't like do anything for like a larger question, the assumption that it would be able to resolve questions of anti-blackness without defining what that is like in this round, like yes, like legal definitions could be anti-black, like so some level of like winning the claim would be affirmative to prove that like as a general like overarching thing, the negative debater slash like the opposite or whoever you're debating is anti-black, but it lacks so much specificity for a debate that might be about competing interpretations depending on what the 2AR is. That I don't know what it would do for you except just be like, you can resolve anti-blackness. And the judge would be like, oh man, I can resolve anti-blackness. But I think that if there's more of like a 2AR interpretation that's just like, like your ballot will not signify anything larger to the community, but these are the instantiations of anti-blackness slash racism that we've identified within this round. These are the ways that their legal definitions have like perpetuated all of these issues. All of those things would be good. For example, the Erickson 3 evidence is based upon like a what's the thing when a book is republished? There's like a very specific term for it, whatever, English. But the original book came from before the Civil Rights Act was passed, and so all of the stuff about like rules and like what debate should look like, etc., doesn't like consider blackness. Something like that attached to like a you can resolve anti-blackness in this round, I think would be good, because then you would be like the definition, like the legal definition that you are utilizing against me for this round is something that does not consider me, which is why it is exclusionary.
Okay, so just like a question of like in-round microaggressions happening now means that you know that your ballot can act as a deterrent mechanism in sort of like ballot proximity, which means that regardless of competing interpretations, ballot proximity is a prior question to whether or not that model is good out there, which means that you should affirm. Okay, that makes sense.
I have another question specifically about the definition TA. It wasn't really developed too much in this debate, but I guess like the way that we want to go for the argument in future rounds is if we could just claim that the way we come to understand the words in resolution is based on legal definitions of like subjective relations and instinctual reactions. I think that's persuasive, piece of terminal defense to predictability, and by extension fairness and clash. We were like, your model is as unpredictable to us as ours is to you, even if you can understand legal definitions, we can't, because we haven't like, had those lived experiences that would move us to that conclusion? Or does that just like not pass the litmus test of, I guess, persuasiveness?
Wake brain, when we make that argument, it's paired with the counter interpretation, and I think you need counter definitions to go for legal definitions bad.
I guess just like the one thing, like, I think that like the argument that we're trying to make is less like legal definitions bad, more like definitions bad, like imposing a universal understanding of the topic isn't in itself bad. So it's not that like legal readings of the topic is bad. It's that the idea that the way that you have read the resolution is the only correct way to read it, and that we should be forced to follow. That is like in and of itself violent because it denies our relationship to the rest. So I know that wasn't clear, and I'm not saying that like what the 2AR said. In a world where that argument is explained in that way, does that sound persuasive? Or do you think there's like any way to make it palatable?
I just don't understand so like you said, universal definition's bad.
Yes.
What does a model of debate?
There's no, like, the point is that there's no model, that there's like, we shouldn't impose T. Like, we should be able to read our app without being punished. Maybe some KVK debates, like, could have read a K, but like, this is like, I don't think that this would like go with counter. Or do you think we should just scratch all that and just say counter, give a case list, KVK debate, defensive predictability, here's some arguments about why that model is good?
I think offering a counter interpret is also good because
Okay.
it becomes a question of like, even if you have like KVK debates, there's like social terms that are just like universally defined amongst literature.
Okay.
And saying that there's like no stasis point between them also functionally means that like even KVK debates become very modal.
Yeah.
And also like literature, like then becomes instances of like lit-based testing.
Okay,
or,
I see, yeah.
like,
All right, that makes sense.
I just had one question for Emmy and Joshua.
Hmm.
I understand that like this round came down to like, what happened here versus model perhaps. How do you think fairness plays out?
I think that I'm given two different scenarios to kind of look at. One, I'm given the scenario of the affirmative, which they're saying there's like no real impact, or the impact filter to fairness is like functionally rooted in like anti-Black violence. On the other hand, I have this sort of warrant making this two end that like fairness pretty much is like a heated deep discussion, like people won't engage in space, things like that, like basically in terms of like engagement or vice versa. Depending on how I view the debate between the two, I'm not really sure on which one to view. Because again, I'm not really given warrants as to like which one I evaluate between the two. I think that the 2AR just like makes a bit of explanation, especially on the competing models of the debate. So I kind of use that as like a filter to answer that question. But in terms of how I view both of them directly, I'm not really given an answer. However, I do think that if the 2NR would have done a lot like just explanation on this, I think that probably would have been
What would that explanation be?
just probably just like an instance of just like taking that and applying it to taking that and saying that like either limits or education vice versa are the internal link to one another, and explaining how you get offense off the limits decide, and also explaining how like the limits decide we make claims that it's the internal link to any form of like engagement, i.e. through any sort of like offense. If the counter model is saying, if the competing interest or whatever is saying that we should engage in other forms of discussion or whatever the competing interest is saying, or like subject formations, whatever, I think you should make claims that like offering some form of engagement with the testing is functionally like, that functionally should be allowed for any sort of like movement building within subject formations.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think just like some variation of that.
like fairness has to turn their offense.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Tammy, did you have thoughts?
The extension for the figures no originality. So it's like, fairness is a functional debate. Two things for me. One is that the utilization of legal definition stops at affective relationship at the top, and so that like the utilization of the definitions is the thing that actually stops it. And then two, there's a concession that the maximization of fairness is the thing that is bad, not that fairness is always something that is bad. And so I think that the debater's thing needs to shift a little bit to answer why like the maximization of it is good or bad. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So to answer maximization, would you have bought an argument about why it is not just fairness being important, but like fairness is an internal to many of their impacts? Is that what you mean?
I think for the maximization maximization stuff is a little bit tied to the Caesar refinement of whiteness stuff, so I think they should just like have like a really big push into like, it's not a refinement, it's a like, I actually think that the standard they should have gone for is actually more on like the testing direction. It just been like they're like testing plus class, like that last like, I think 30-ish seconds of the 2NR should have been a bulk of the 2NR for testing class. And then I think that would take out the stuff about refining whiteness. And be like, no, this is about like good things for blackness.
I also think winning some defense foreign policy helps answer testing whiteness stuff, because then like, there's ways to test absent iterating whiteness. And so I think the presumption, like the subjectivity stuff, got you some mileage in this debate, but I think you get more mileage out of.
Yeah, no, it gets weird when you concede like this theory of the world and.
About that.
Yeah, good debate.